Hey everybody, Spider here. Comes to podcast once again, San Antonio, Texas, being joined by Marshall Virtue. My man, how are you doing, sir?
Good, how are you?
Man, I'm doing great. Of course, this is day 2. We are here inside Ingram Mall. I gotta ask you, day 1, man. I mean, have you ever been to Texas? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, I came to Tony's show down in Houston a couple years ago. He just contacted me out of the blue. I never thought when I made Valentine 24 years ago that I'd end up in Texas doing this, but yeah, it's been a great experience, and I think the horror movie fans are some of the most welcoming, accepting people I've ever met in my life. Yeah.
No, and I gotta say too, because when it comes to horror, a lot of people think, of course, the opposite. They're thinking, oh man, you're getting like all these bad guys. For us horror fans out there, I mean, it's more relaxing. I mean, we enjoy them. It's all, you know, we know there's character. We know it's a movie, so of course we're not out there trying to emulate. But for yourself, I mean, when you jumped on the Valentine movie, 2001, man, how did they approach you for the part? I mean, of course they were just like, hey, you know what, there's this horror movie. I mean, what were your thoughts on it?
Oh, okay. So I was actually hired as the assistant stunt coordinator. I grew up doing stunts. I was 21 years old, and they kind of decided that the role, because I was doing so many dangerous activities with all our lead actors, they wanted to have somebody that had good self-awareness and was basically safer for all the actors. And they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I was like, yeah, why not? You know,
Sweet,
and here we are.
and yesterday we talked a little bit about reboots, man. I mean, there's a lot of reboots, of course, throughout the years. Do you think Valentine is up for another reboot, man?
I honestly haven't heard anything of that, but I would definitely do it.
Yeah.
You know, I
yeah.
thought it was a great movie, and it's clearly got a cult following. And yeah, it's very cool.
And of course, I mean, it is February. I mean, you know, Valentine's Day is approaching pretty soon. I had asked you about this as well. You know, when the movie came out, I mean, did that affect you after dating? I mean, getting to know people? Were you kind of like, oh, by the way, I'm a killer in a Valentine's Day movie, man?
Not necessarily. No, nobody was scared I was going to kill him or anything.
Oh, yeah. and then coming from stunts, how did that come about? I mean, of course, it's in the family, right? This is something that your dad
so I'm a second generation stuntman. I did my first stunt when I was like 10 years old on the Black Stallion, and basically started performing full time when I was 18. And I ended up kind of retiring earlier from stunts because it's kind of like being a professional athlete in the sense of there is a shelf life, and I was getting pretty beat up, so I kind of transitioned to directing and stunt coordinating.
No, and of course, I mean, for those that are out there, I mean, you started young in the business, but for those that are out there interested in doing it now, what would you recommend for them to start doing?
I think just, you know, for stunts in particular, training parkour, martial arts, and like trying to be well versed in that, and just getting out there and being a background person on movies and hustling stunt coordinators and try to do everything you can to break through, and just know it's not going to happen overnight.
Right. No, for sure, man. And I'm sure, I mean, throughout the years, I mean, you've done tons of projects, a lot of movies, because you've always been a stunt actor, a stunt coordinator. Is that a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to film? Because of course, if your face was on everything, people would be swarming you. I mean, people know who you are when when they approach you, and of course, at conventions of what you've done. But do you think it's a bad thing or a good thing that your face wasn't everywhere?
I prefer this.
Yeah. No, yes.
I prefer this. I honestly, I have a lot of friends and work with a lot of people that are really, really famous, and I wouldn't really like that. I get to live a normal life.
Yeah.
And you know, come up to these things, and yeah, I get a little attention there, but that's good enough for me.
Yeah. And of course, parkour. I mean, you mentioned martial arts. So, what martial arts forms did you participate in growing up?
I was in boxing and Thai boxing, and but I would say for stunts, I'm a little bit good at everything.
Yeah.
Where now a lot of guys, they're more just good at one or two things, where they might be a parkour master, they might be a professional stunt driver, and And but I was back in the day. We just kind of did everything. So
and I was going to ask you about that too, because I've actually interviewed stunt actors, from the 80s, 70s, and a lot of them were like, man, it's a job. So a lot of times they're like, hey, have you ever done fire? And they're like, yeah. And then they go home and they're like, hey, how do you do fire? Like they kind of have to learn it because it's a job. You want to get paid. Is that kind of what you went through?
There's definitely been some situations where, I'm on set doing something for the very first time, going, holy cow, right? Yeah.
You're like the only one thing to do, and of course, I mean, you guys do get paid for this, man. So how does that work with insurance? I mean, do you guys have to have your own insurance? Does the production have it?
There's no insurance. I mean, we do have a union, so if you were to get hurt, you do get some money,
right?
But it's not enough. So we try to keep ourselves healthy and just try not to get hurt. I would never try to insure myself. I'm sure it would cost so much money.
No, for sure, man. Yeah. And I know once again, I've talked to actors, and of course they say one individual, of course, he had told me he had broken his arm, and he was just like, man, I had to go home, tape it up. I said I had to get paid.
Yeah.
So they went back and they kept doing the film. Right?
I did have a stunt where I hyperextended my arm and broke it right here, and I had to do 3 more takes of the stunt after that, knowing my arm was broken, and then kind of sneak away to the hospital. But things are a little bit different now. Everything's a little bit safer and more, like if you're hurt, you're leaving the set. But back in the day, it was a little bit more, I don't want to say tougher, but a little bit more cowboy, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people, the 80s and 90s, I mean, we used to fall down and get up, now they fall down, they lay there for a while till somebody picks them up, So, generation, of course, I don't want to say they've gotten softer, but, for the most part, they're not as tough as we used to be, man.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, as far as projects, because right now you actually are a stunt instructor, correct?
Stunt coordinator, yeah.
Stunt coordinator, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so as far as projects, what are you working on this year?
Well, I've done a bunch of stuff. I just did season 2 of The Recruit, which it just came out on Netflix, which is a really cool show. I've been helping my friend with Percy Jackson on Disney. I just did a movie called Shiver that was kind of a $20 million independent movie about werewolves, so we'll see what happens with that.
Nice, man. Nice.
But yeah, it's been a good year. It's been busy. Yeah.
And of course, yesterday once again I had mentioned indie films. I mean, would you be opposed to or even interested in if somebody were to contact you and say like, hey, we got this indie film? I mean, of course they're paying, but would that be up your alley?
I would definitely be interested. I'd want to probably maybe be more involved than just a stunt coordinator. Like, I love directing, and I love directing like second units and stuff like that. So if it was an independent, I would want to be a little bit more involved and see it from the ground up. Yeah. No,
for sure, man. Yeah. I mean, your name's on it, so you want to make sure it's up to your standards, right?
Yeah.
And now again, this year, as far as conventions, do you have anything else scheduled?
I don't. No. I'm to be honest with you, I'm a bit of an introvert, and I don't like. It's not that I don't like doing this, it's just it takes me a little bit of convincing to get me out to these kind of things. And I hadn't been for 2 years, and I love Tony and those guys, and it's like, okay, well, I gotta come out and say hi, and it's been worth it.
So was the deal like, hey, if I go, y'all gotta come, right? Because you brought him with you, so No, and for sure, man. Having been in films, I gotta ask you: are you a fan of films? I mean, is there films out there that you're like, oh man, like, do you still get starstruck when you're somewhere and you meet somebody?
I don't think I necessarily get starstruck with actors anymore.
Right.
And I do love film, but I definitely, especially talking to a lot of these guys, I definitely need to get caught up on a lot of movies because. A lot of times when you're working on movies, when you get a break from it, the last thing you want to do is watch a movie, or you want to just listen to music or something like that. But there's some movies that have stood out in my life for sure. Yeah.
And of course, I mean, since you brought up movies coming up, I mean, I did went to go see a Hard Ice the other day, Valentine's Day slasher. You have not seen it, correct?
I haven't seen it. The trailer looks amazing.
Yeah. And my question on that was because for me, the time limit for a film, I mean, of course, it's an hour and 30. After an hour and 30, I'm like, man, it's got to be damn good because it's like that's a little too long. That film was an hour and 55, and I personally thought that it could have finished earlier. Now, being that you've been a director, worked behind the films, of course, I'm sure there's tons of film that you're like, man, I want to use it, but So what's the process when you have to use certain parts? I mean, is it kind of like, okay, you know what, it's going to be an hour and 30, let's cut this, so how do you differ like one or the other?
Yeah, well, I've done because I've directed a lot of TV where you got to keep it within 42 minutes,
right.
and it's really tough because the main thing you want to do is hold on to the story, but you might have some amazing shots
that you
don't want to cut, and then you have to, just because, story first, right? And I kind of agree with you. If the movie for me is going to be 3 hours long, it's got to be mind blowing. I don't have the patience to be sitting there for 3-4 hours. Yeah.
No, for sure, man. And of course, like I mentioned, man, we are here inside Ingram Mall, San Antonio, Texas. Thank you for jumping on this, man. Anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, just if you want to come down and see me, love to meet you, and thanks for interviewing me.
No, not a problem. And everybody out there, Ford Marshall Virtue, this is Spider coming to the podcast. So next time, follow up.